Well, Tony Poulos here at Mobile World Congress 2013. Wow, we're into day 3, and I thought I'd catch up with my old friend John Tanner, Global Technology Editor at Telecom Asia. John, welcome.
Oh, thank you very much.
What is the buzz this week?
The buzz is, I'm not sure I can say this on camera, but basically, well, let me put it this way. In all the keynote sessions that we've seen and some of the discussions that we've had with operators here, it seems like if there's one common theme that you've heard throughout the entire show, is nothing to do about technology and everything to do with regulation. Oh. Basically, operators are sick of it, and they want the regulators to get off their backs.
Well, I ran a panel session on the Monday afternoon. I had 4 CEOs, and their concern was the regulators as well, but they wanted the over-the-top players or anybody else that's coming into the industry to be regulated by the same regulations that they have to live through. Is that doable?
Well, I mean, it's in theory doable, but you basically have to convince the regulators of that, because one keynote session I sat in on, they pointed out that regulators basically have 2 choices in terms of the policies that they want to do. One is to have a light touch policy that enables innovation, enables the market to sort of drive everything. You get high data usage, you get high revenues, or you can have a policy that basically tries to get prices down to the lowest possible level to make it affordable for everyone. You can't really have it both ways, and obviously the operators want the former option. The question is whether you can get the regulators to do that, because pushing prices down to where it's like $1 a month for phone service is obviously very politically popular, but maybe not practical for the industry.
Yeah, it's funny, the CEOs that I had were talking about fear of discounting the value of data, but I'm frightened that in some markets that's already happened, and it's very hard to come back and start charging more for data. So they're trying to devise strategies and tariff plans that don't show that the value is coming back in by adding more features over the top.
Yeah, it's tough for them, but I mean, you see lots of examples where operators have really come up with some really innovative pricing plans for LTE and putting that premium value on it. That's probably got a limited shelf life in the long run, as the services get more prevalent and new types of over-the-top services happen through partnerships or whatever. And there has been a lot of talk about that at the show too. It's been quite funny. It's kind of a bit of a turnaround. 2 years ago, when OTT guys came to MWC, there was a little bit of animosity across the table. But at this show, an OTT player gets on stage and says, like, oh yeah, we totally eat up your SMS revenues, and but we want to work with you, and the operators are like, we do too.
Yeah. Well, I was interested to see, particularly this year, a massive presence by Ford, the motor company, with their connected car philosophy and a lot of value-added services over the top. They're not frightened to turn up at this event, and I think the big numbers, they're talking about over 70,000, may have been that we have a lot of new exhibitors coming in. Things like over-the-top players, things like M2M services, etc. Did you get the buzz, or did you hear anything about that happening?
About Ford specifically?
Yes, or M2M particularly. Was that
M2M is all over the place at the show. There's been a lot of talk about it. I mean, obviously, Internet of Things has been on the mind of the GSMA for a long time, and we're starting to see now some concrete examples of what kind of things are going to be connected and the impact that's going to have on data going forward. There's a lot of demonstrations on the floor about that, and it is going to be huge.
There was a lot of talk about NFC, as always at a GSMA event. We haven't seen it really come into its own yet, but here they made the whole event NFC enabled. There was only one problem with that: you had to have an NFC enabled phone. So there were a lot of Apple people that were Apple iPhone people that missed out completely. Oops, exactly. Yeah. I think.
I was going to say, I mean, the NFC presence here is actually, I find, a bit encouraging. I do have an NFC enabled handset, so I've been testing it out, and the only real problem you have is having the internet connectivity behind that NFC connection to download some of the data behind it. So if you can get on Wi-Fi, that's fine, and the Wi-Fi system here is actually quite good. But if you have to go over the mobile internet, of course, you'd have to be roaming to be able to do that for a lot of people, and that's problematic. But they've done a pretty good job of demonstrating what you can do with NFC besides just make contactless payments, which is the most hyped example of what you can do. But there's lots of other things as well, and they've showcased that fairly well, so that may have stimulated the imaginations of some of the more entrepreneurial people here to go off and develop new solutions for it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, but being connected or being connected all the time means being connected all the time. So a lot of that functionality will not work without the network being viable.
And there's still lots of standardization issues. You still have to get a lot of people involved in what's going to be a very complex ecosystem for NFC to really take off. I mean, there's authentication issues and everything, and GSMA has spearheaded a lot of initiatives to address those, but it's still slow going. And the problem with standardization is that it just takes a long time, and the OTT players have shown that they can innovate a hell of a lot faster.
Well, neither of us have been particularly standard in our lifestyles and work life, so we'll probably...
That's another story.
Yeah, that's another story, so we can vouch for the standardisation argument. John, always a pleasure. Good to talk to you, and hope we see you before the end of the show.
Thanks a lot. Glad to be here.